Alright guys, take two. As y'all saw, I wasn't able to post the jinx because of YouTube's audio and visual restrictions, so I'm gonna go ahead and just scrap that one, not even deal with it, and kind of do things a little bit different. Do not worry, it's gonna still be some awesome content coming your way. This case I'm doing, I have no words, and that's usually not the case. I did something there. At least I make myself laugh. Oh, help. If you've ever seen the movie The Orphan, this case is kind of like that in a way. All credit for my research goes to Skip Hollingsworth from Texas Monthly. He made an amazing article over this. So thank you so much, Skip. Top notch. This is the case of Treva Throneberry. Dun dun dun. What? Treva Joyce Throneberry. It's gonna be very, very hard for me not to say Thornberry. Treva Joyce Throneberry was born on May 18th, 1969 to Patsy and Carl Throneberry in Electra, Texas. And I know you're probably thinking, where is Electra, Texas? You are not alone in that, because I had to look it up. The very small town of Electra, Texas is located right outside Wichita Falls. And for all my friends who have no idea of anything outside of Houston, like myself, Wichita Falls is right outside Fort Worth. So shout out to all my DFW friends. In this article, it kind of jumps back and forth through the timeline, so we're gonna fast forward to 1985. Treva's friends would describe her as a pretty girl, that it was thin, with short brown hair that came down to her shoulders, and a spray of freckles across her face. Now that is something I would buy. Spray freckles on. I'd put that on all over. The librarian at Electra High described her as a very quiet type person, which, what's that like? Because you know I ain't. People in her town described her as a shy girl, but never unhappy. She never really complained. She was kind of just there. She worked at a little burger joint where a lot of truck drivers would come and eat there, and on her break she would kind of sit in the back table by herself and read her red little Bible. When people from Electra now look back at, what they remember about Treva, they said she didn't do anything crazy that kind of made her like a defined person in that town, but they always remembered that she would get a very strange, vacant look in her eyes, that they couldn't quite get what she was thinking. It wasn't daydreaming. It was just a stone cold, no one was there, vacant stare. She was a frequent attendee at her local Pentecostal church, and a church member there did recall a time where they witnessed Treva stumbling up to the altar and throwing herself down on her knees and telling Jesus that she doesn't deserve to live. And that, I don't know why this is just being like brought up, because that is something that would really stick with me. I hope someone was like, "Yo, T, you okay? Like, help the poor girl, y'all." She did have a niece named Jalisha, J''Lisha, so Jalisha, I'm gonna assume. Jalisha, if you so happen to come upon this video, I'm sorry if I just butchered your name. She did tell a story of Treva that one night she woke up to her being shaken, and Treva was telling her that she needed to get up because there was a man outside her room holding a gun to them. If I was like Jalisha in that moment, I'd be like, like that SpongeBob meme, I'm gonna head out. Bye. Her family and friends kind of like brushed that off to it being a teenage girl phase, and that at least she wasn't drinking and smoking like some of the other high school girls were doing at that time. But, like, what? Are there other high school phases where you see men pointing a gun at you? Because I must have skipped that phase. December of 1985 rolls around, and there were a few more instances with Treva and her friends, kind of weird interactions, but they again chalked it up to teen phases. And all of a sudden, she stopped showing up to work. That was a very big deal because Treva was one to never really call in sick. Was always on time. Was a really really hard worker at that job. And when people are asked, what they thought, they literally said, "We don't know. She just disappeared." Fast forward to 1997 in Vancouver, Washington. The new girl showed up to Evergreen High School. She was wearing a t-shirt, loose bib overalls. What is that, by the way? Moving on. Tennis shoes, and had 2 pigtails. She was described to have a fuller figure than most teenage girls, but she had an appealing lopsided smile and childlike voice that tinged with the southern drawl. This is what I can only imagine it looked like. Hey y'all. I'm the new girl, y'all. I'm not gonna lie, I kind of want to do the rest of the video like this. She told school officials at Evergreen High that her name was Brianna Stewart, and she moved from Portland, Oregon, and she spent most of her days walking the streets and sleeping in very grim youth shelters at night. During her time in Vancouver, she attended Tidings Church, where she met a really sweet couple that heard her testimony, and they also went to the school with her and told them that she is a very sweet girl with lots of potential and that she just needed help to get over her past. She told Greg Merrill, the school counselor at Evergreen High, that she was living with her mother and Navajo stepfather, who was the sheriff's deputy, and that her mother was murdered. And so at the age of 13, she decided to run away and hitchhike from state to state to find her biological father. Her biological father, according to her mom, lived somewhere in the Northwest, and so now Brianna was here to try to figure out her past and put some clues together. Greg Merrill said this was the craziest and most unusual case he's ever came across in 30 years. I wonder why, Gregory. I wonder why. That ain't Brianna. Homegirl also promised that she wanted to be a good student and have a normal life, and she was just hoping that this school could help her lead her to the clues of her past. That's my BS button. BS. Brianna was then enrolled into Evergreen High, where she went to her first class of the day, which was algebra. She was seated in the back, and she looked over and saw a boy smiling at her. Hi. Hi. I'm Brianna. I'm new here. Ew. Now we're going to rewind back to 1985 in Electra, Texas. In a small town like Electra, it doesn't take long for rumors and stories to spread like wildfire. Almost said flower. Anyways, it was reported by the townspeople that they last saw Treva at the police station, making a report against her father that her father had raped her at gunpoint. and that when she went to go tell her mom laughed it off. A very stunned police officer sent social services right over to the Throneberry's house and had Treva removed immediately and an immediate protection order put on her. When the news was broken out to everyone, a lot of people were surprised because it wasn't really like in the Throneberry's characters to kind of have that happen in their household. They were described as country folk that had a picture of John Wayne on one side of the house and then a rug drapery of the Last Supper on the other side. Patsy, who's your interior designer? Because she just sounds lovely. Carl Throneberry did admit fully that sometimes he had trouble making ends meet, but he always made sure that his kids had clothing, shelter, food at the end of the day, and he always worked to provide for his 4 daughters and his son, Treva being the youngest. In court, he insisted that Treva made up the entire story. Nothing about it was true. And also, his daughters gave an affidavit saying, this is not true. Our father would never do that. No, no, no. Absolutely no. While in court for these allegations, Carl did state that if anybody had raped Treva, it was the fanatical church members who were trying to brainwash her to join their missionary. The church did counter, saying that, no, we did not do that. We were trying to help a distressed girl. She told us that every night she was so scared of staying at home that she would sneak out and sleep on the church pews or an abandoned house somewhere. When Treva was removed from her home, she was put in foster care, and she lived with a woman named Sharon Gentry. Now, Sharon was a middle school science teacher, so she was very used to, teenage hormones, girls in distress, all that. But she did report some very odd behaviors from Treva when she was living with her. That one night she walked into Treva's room, and Treva was in the corner of the room with her in fetal position with her bed covers over her. And that another night she found Treva banging her head against the wall, saying, "Please don't hurt me. I swear I'll be a good girl." Like everyone else who knew Treva, Sharon Gentry was very moved by how polite and soft-spoken Treva was, and how she often just either read her Bible or she would go and write soulful teen poetry in her notebook. As the weeks went on living with Sharon Gentry, Treva started to leave some very disturbing notes on her ironing board, and this being one of them. "Sometimes I wish I were dead. Sometimes I don't. Life seems impossible and death seems eternal. I will have no life after death." She also would sometimes come out of her room just to tell Gentry that she kept having dreams about shooting herself in the head, and that she could see the bullet going through her head. She then tells this lovely story that one day, while living in Electra, she was kidnapped and blindfolded. The kidnappers took her to an abandoned oil field where a satanic cult with black robes on danced around her and while she was tied up, and they slit the throats of black cats and dogs and made her drink the blood. What? Not long after these stories were told, Treva approached a school counselor and told them that she's going to be jumping off the 3rd-story building. The counselor immediately called the police, and the police took her in and put her into a mental health institution. There, the doctors and nurses were very puzzled by her behavior. She wouldn't speak to anybody, but she only wrote notes to Sharon Gentry and a boy that took her on a date to Six Flags. And one of the notes stated this: "I feel like a living robot. I walk when they say walk. I sit when they say sit. I do everything because I have to. I can't take it anymore. I have to die. And like I previously stated, the doctors and psychiatrists were so puzzled by her behavior that they decided to diagnose her with characterological disorder. And to better help kind of get inside her mindset, they decided to schedule a meeting with Treva and her parents in the same room. The trial against her father, Carl, was dismissed because there was no evidence to prove otherwise. And so when they were in that meeting, they asked Treva to admit that the rape allegations were false. And when she was in there, she said to her parents that they were the one that were liars and that they don't love her and that she wishes to go back to her room. And that was it. Fast forwarding back to Vancouver, Washington, 1997, Brianna was so grateful to be able to be enrolled in Evergreen High. Like most students, she did struggle with algebra. Same. And she excelled in English. All the students were so impressed that she was able to quote entire passages from Macbeth. Well, duh. This was like what, her 12th time in English? She should be able to quote the whole thing. This kind of weirds me out, but every day she came back to school with the same outfit on. Overalls, pigtails, t-shirt, tennis shoes. Like, doesn't that smell after a moment? Wouldn't you be like, hey, you want to go shopping? Like, let's get out of the bib overalls. To the rest of the Evergreen students, Brianna was just, regular old girl just trying to graduate high school. But to Ken, the boy who sat next to her in algebra, she was something else. He said she was like nothing he's ever seen before. Ken, are you stupid? No wonder she's not like everyone else. She's like twice your age, bro. Not long after, Brianna and Ken started exchanging notes. Flirtatious notes, I might add. One of them said, hey, what's up? This guy. Another said, you're the best guy I know. Class 2000 rules. What? It's going to be very hard to keep a straight face. In his 1978 Brown El Camino nickname, the Turd Tank, he took, him and Brianna went on a few dates. I'm so sorry, y'all. This poor kid, he's like dating a 40-year-old that he doesn't even know. I don't know what she's 40, but she's old. And he has a car that the school calls a turd tank. Oh my god, I can't. Initially, when they first started dating, Brianna only told Ken bits and pieces about her life. Until one day, Brianna took a deep breath in and told Ken everything. She told Ken that when she was younger, she watched her stepfather stab her mother to death, and then she had to help him carry the body away. Then she said that her stepfather then started taping him and his friends gang raping her, and that one day she got pregnant from it, and he didn't want her to have the baby, and so her stepfather pushed her down the stairs, and since he did that, it forced her to miscarry, but since he was the chief of police, nobody would believe her, and so that's when she ran away to go find her biological father. It's just... Ken being the sweet little naive boy with a turd tank. I'm sorry. Was so amazed by her story and just thought she was the most beautiful girl in the world and that she had endured so much and that he was just absolutely head over heels in love with this girl. They decided to attend the Sadie Hawkins dance together, and as they went out on the dance floor with Shania Twain's You're Still the One playing in the background, they looked at each other and Ken said, "I love you." And Brianna said, "I love you too." And then he pushed her hair back and gave her a tender first kiss. You're still the one. Nope. I ain't Shania. He then proceeded to kiss her again, and he recalled saying that I was 16, she was 16. It was the perfect teen romance anyone could have. I thought to myself, how could anything go wrong? Boy, it's about to go real wrong. Now we are rewinding back to 1986. Treva, after 5 months, was discharged from the hospital. The doctors deemed her non-suicidal, just unpredictable. When she was discharged, she asked the social workers not to put her back in her parents' house. Parents were like, that's fine. We don't want anything to do with her. So she was enrolled in Lena Pope, which was a treatment program for troubled adolescents. With that, she enrolled in Arlington High to finish off her senior year. Her counselors asked her what she would like to do after she graduates, to which she replied, I'm going to enroll in Bible college because they don't require the SAT, and that she, again, just wants to live a normal life and be a normal girl. She did return to Electra just to visit with her sisters. She was not allowed to go back to her parents' house. Her sisters confronted her about, the allegations she had against her father, and Treva was just adamant that it happened. And her sisters argued, no, it didn't happen, but we understand if you think something did happen because something happened to us. They were not sexually abused by their father, but they were sexually abused by their uncle, Billy Ray. Their uncle stayed with them for a while, and they were all molested by him at some point, and it was to the point where it got so bad that they all married super young just to get out of the house. And Treva, being the youngest, it left Treva by herself with their uncle Billy Ray. Her sisters believed that Treva kind of just pushed it back so far that she is kind of just believing what she thinks, and that's with her dad, and that they just couldn't really get through to her about it, and that whenever they did try to say, like, okay, well, this happened to us, did that happen to you, Treva would go back into her vacant eyes, and they said that she did not listen. She was just like in an entirely different world whenever they tried to kind of understand what she was doing. The day after returning back to Electra, Treva left again. She was reported to be living with a woman in Fort Worth that she met at the YMCA. She occasionally would call Sharon Gentry, but it wasn't often, and then not too long after, Treva disappeared again. Fast forward to 1998, Vancouver, Washington. Brianna kind of made her mark at Evergreen High as the girl with the troubled past. Teachers often reported that they would find her in the library reading about, abducted children and books about law and child abduction issues. For English, she wrote a paper about a girl named Jessica who couldn't figure out her past and worked with the police and found out through a DNA match that she was abducted as a child, and she named it Betrayed. This story she wrote, Betrayed, was almost identical to what her past was. And she would tell anybody about her past who would listen. And at this point, she was begging for help to get a social security number so she could be officially Brianna Stewart. And with that, she can go on to find out more about her past and get maybe a birth certificate and figure out who her real father is. And that what was complicated about her past is that a lot of parts were hazy, and it was just, things weren't adding up. Her story started to garner some attention, and a mental health professional interviewed her and said that she probably suffered from amnesia and post-traumatic stress syndrome, that's hard to say, and that she wasn't even sure what her real name was. She said that her stepfather told her that her name was Brianna, and that in Navajo, it meant bright eyes. No, it doesn't. She told a sympathetic news reporter that, "I don't think I was always Brianna Stewart. I didn't know who I was then, but I know who I am now." Girl, no you don't. You don't even know what... Do you think Navajo Brianna means bright eyes? I couldn't even put that sentence together because I was just so... Brianna, no. So since Brianna's bright eyes story started gaining traction, there was a lot of other people that wanted to help her figure out her past. A state social worker conducted exhaustive governmental record searches for any evidence of Brianna or her family. A staffer from Indian Health Services looked up, her past and scoured the national database and even asked for blood to see if there was a DNA match. Reportedly, an FBI agent in Portland took her to investigate a kidnapping in Salt Lake City to see if she was the one that was abducted. Wasn't her, obviously. And then also, again, a Montana sheriff took her to see if she was a kidnapping case from a long time ago. Again, she wasn't. Homegirl was so adamant that she took off time from school to ride a bus to Daphne, Alabama, where a sheriff picked her up and drove her around Daphne to see if there was anything she recognized. She said she recognized a park bench. She said she recognized a table at McDonald's she used to eat at when she was younger. Needless to say, there was no evidence that she ever lived in Daphne, Alabama. Now we're getting to the beginning of the end of Brianna. One day after a dentist appointment, the dentist reached out to her social worker and said there's something off about her. Brianna's wisdom teeth had been already extracted and the incisions were already healed fully. And he said that is very, very, very unusual for a 16-year-old to have. The social worker did reach out to Brianna and asked her about it, to which Brianna wrote a 5-page blistering letter back to the social worker, criticizing those who doubted her history, said that her word means so much to her and that being as honest and upfront as she can about herself and that she means every word she says. Seems a little much for just one little question. Being like most girls with their boyfriends, Brianna went back and kind of vented to Ken about what happened at the dentist. Ken obviously had a few questions, but the fact that Ken was not appalled like Brianna was furious. She told him, "How dare you don't believe me that I'm 16? How could you say that? How can you say that and you love me?" Ken was like, "Okay, whoa, sorry, chill, sorry." So he pushed the confrontation in the back of his mind, and he went out and bought her a sterling silver ring that had a quote from their favorite movie, Romeo and Juliet. Leonardo won, DiCaprio won, and it said, "I love thee," and gave it to her as like an apology gift. By the end of their junior year, something happened that just completely rocked Ken's world. Brianna had moved into his best friend's home with his family because she told them that the family she was staying with could no longer afford her. In 1999, Brianna called the police and said that she found a camera in her room and that Mr. Gambetta, the father, was spying on her. Who would want to spy? I don't even know. Brianna claimed that Mr. Gambetta put tiny cameras all around the light fixtures in her room, and that's how he was spying on her. A quick police investigation showed that was completely false. And for the first time since knowing her, Ken finally sat back and said, "Oh my God, what if she is making everything up?" It's about time, Ken. It's about time. Ken and Brianna ended up breaking up, and she graduated in June 2000 from Evergreen High School with a 2.33 GPA. I don't mean to be mean here, but didn't you do high school like 7 times? Shouldn't it be higher? After graduating high school in June 2000, Brianna began working on the Nader campaign, just answering phone calls. She spent the rest of her time fighting to get a social security number. She hired 2 different lawyers, one in Portland, one in Vancouver. Neither of them knew about the other. The Portland lawyer filed a petition against the state federal government to get a social security number for her. And all she had to do was give a fingerprint and show up to court. The Vancouver lawyer went against the whole state, and so that one had more progress. And so the state deputy attorney general did not oppose of Brianna getting a social security number in Vancouver, so she was about to be officially Brianna Stewart. But that didn't happen. On March 22nd, 1 week before her hearing, she was arrested by Vancouver police detectives on charges of theft and perjury. The detectives told her that she was a 31-year-old woman who fraudulently received free foster care and free public education from the state of Washington. Brianna was like, "What? There has to be some kind of mistake." And the Vancouver police detectives were like, "No, there's no mistake. We got your fingerprints back from the Portland attorney when it was requested, and it matches to fingerprints of a woman that was last in Altoona, Pennsylvania, named Treva Throneberry." News got out quick about Brianna's, or Treva's, whatever you want to call hers, arrest. And so Ken's poor mom had to break the news to him. He was working in Disney World at the time, and his mom called him and told him, everything that happened. And Ken said, "Mom, did I seriously go to a dance with a woman 12 years older than me?" Oh, I feel so bad for him and his turd tank. Most of the kids at Evergreen were fully convinced they were hoodwinked. They were like, oh my gosh, she got such bad grades and was so awkward, so we would believe she was a high schooler. Others did not believe that. One girl even said, just goes to show you how much algebra sucks. Like, who is this girl? I want to meet her. Amazing. This case brought a lot of opinions. People on one side felt that she shouldn't be going to jail, that she needs to be put in a mental institution. Others thought, no, she wasted so many people's time and money that she needs to be put in jail and she needs to repay everything that, others put into this, trying to help her find out her past. In her jail cell, she spoke to interviewers and judges and said, I am not Treva Throneberry. She was adamant. Her niece even wrote her, and Treva, or Brianna, whatever, wrote back, said, I'm sorry to tell you this, but I don't know who you are. The prosecutor and the defense team ended up coming together and coming up with a plea deal for Treva to take, and all she had to do was plead guilty and admit that she is Treva Throneberry. But she said no. She said, no, I'm not doing that. And so instead, she fired her lawyers and asked to represent herself as her own counsel. Treva's trial began in mid-November in 2001. Every day, she still wore her pigtails, and she would shuffle in with her law books and everything and look at the Superior Court judge and go, hi. Like, what is wrong with you? No one's gonna believe you. Ugh. The judge was just so thrown off by Treva that he would go, hello, Miss Thornberry. Miss Stewart. Whoever you are. Like, this is an esteemed judge, and he just couldn't even, he was just mind blown by the whole situation. Treva really didn't have a case for herself, and the prosecutor had flown in Sharon Gentry to testify against Treva. And Treva tried to cross-examine Gentry, but it almost was like she was trying to get Gentry just to say good things about Treva. Like, she asked her, like, was she a hard worker? Was she smart? Gentry was like, yeah. And so it wasn't even a case to be had, really. In their final arguments, the prosecutor said, this woman just wants to stay a pampered child forever and just wants to have a free ride for the rest of her life. Excuse me. And then Treva, Brianna, whatever, standed up and said, I am Brianna Rebecca Stewart. I am no one else. I am myself. I don't pretend to be anyone else. Obviously, the jury found her guilty and sentenced her to just 3 years in prison. When she was found guilty, she looked out the window and said, this is so unfair. And a reporter was able to be near her, and he said, what? And she goes, this is so unfair. And so she had to get escorted out of the courtroom. And as she was getting escorted out, she yelled, the only thing I'm guilty of is being a teenager. I'm 19. This is not fair. Homegirl, she still thinks she's that age to this day. Oh, ow. And that was the case, I didn't want to hurt my arm again, of Treva Throneberry. It's just absolutely nuts. Absolutely nuts. Thank you so much for sticking with me on this. I'll be uploading a video every Sunday. Make sure to subscribe to True Crime with Kylie, and I will see you next week for next episode.